Good morning, it's April 29th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, Donald Trump's name keeps coming up in legal cases more than Jack McCoy in Law & Order. Now, Jack McCoy has actually retired on the long-running NBC show, and I would hope that some of these prosecutors in all these cases would take a hint and fade away. Now, does Trump do some stupid things? Absolutely. But the question is, are they illegal? And that's the question we're wrestling with. And as I look at the individual cases, I'm struggling to find the legal theory behind the prosecution. And I'm not alone. A majority of those being polled now believe that these trials are some kind of political witch hunt designed to keep Trump off the ballot or tie him up in court so he can't campaign. Now, the first one up is a case in Atlanta. The news around that case sounds like a daytime soap opera. The district attorney, Fannie Willis, hires her paramour, Nathan Wade. She does this despite his inexperience in any major felony cases and pays him more than he ever made in his life. The allegations are that they used the money for their own vacations and other things. When asked about this, Willis responded by saying she repaid Wade with cash she had on hand. Now, there's no evidence showing she had withdrawn the cash from a bank and no evidence that Wade had deposited the cash in his bank. In the end, Wade had to step aside. But the crux of the case is a phone call that Trump made in 2020 to Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, where he asked him to find the 11,780 votes needed to overturn Trump's loss to Biden in Georgia. Now, you can interpret this many ways, and Trump's lawyers have argued he was simply telling Raffensperger to closely examine the voting results and see if there were irregularities that might change the count. Raffensperger declined to do so, but was what Trump doing illegal? Then we move up to the cases in New York City. In the first one, the Attorney General, Letitia James, campaigned for the office by stating she was going to prosecute and put Donald Trump in jail. She brought the case saying that he had overvalued the assets he had in order to get favorable terms on a loan for another property. Now, this case is almost laughable because the bank, Deutsche Bank, took Trump's assets and devalued them themselves, then made the loan. The loan was paid back with interest, and everybody was happy. So here's the question that everyone should be asking. Has Miss James looked at other loan applications by other developers in New York City? Anyone that I've talked to that's in the development business tells me they bring their assets in at the highest value they can in order to get good terms on a loan. The bank then decides, are they willing to accept the assets as collateral? If she's not looking at anyone else, then this is purely a political play on her part. The amount of money set for bond was so ridiculously high that even the appellate court had to reduce it, and it still remains an absurd number. And most legal experts, they expect this decision to be overturned on appeal. The other case in New York is currently being argued as the one that's really outlandish. Bragg's court case, which hinges on the claim that Mr. Trump falsely labeled 7-year-old business records about a non-disclosure agreement payment to an adult film star, was always tenuous. To evaluate this thing and to elevate a somewhat nonsensical issue to a felony. Mr. Bragg had to claim further the entries were mislabeled with intent to commit or conceal a secondary crime. After months of indecision, Mr. Bragg finally settled on a gotcha, suggesting the NDA payments made by lawyer Michael Cohen was an illegal campaign contribution, even though the money came from the candidate, that Mr. Trump criminally concealed from voters, amounting to election interference or fraud. Now consider the sheer nuttiness of this argument, especially when spooled to its natural conclusions. Campaigns exist to present a candidate favorably to the public, to highlight the good things, hide the bad things. If it's a felony, election interference for a candidate to try to keep private details of a seamy relationship with other candidates' concealments of a lawful and entirely personal nature must be reported? Must the out-of-pocket settlements for that fender bender be disclosed, since it conceals a candidate's bad driving skills? How about plastic surgery, since it masks the true ravages of age or health? Whoa, Nancy Pelosi's in trouble. Let's raise donation caps now, since this will cost a lot. And finally on this case, the Bragg case fails on the facts. The claim is made that by concealing his hush money payment, Mr. Trump improperly influenced and interfered with the 2016 vote. Yet had the payment been made and disclosed by the campaign, the final pre-election FEC reports that year were made public on October 27, 2016, and covered transactions only through October 19. Mr. Cohen Trump's attorney, wired the money to Stormy Daniels' team on October 27, and the agreement wasn't signed until the next day. So even as Mr. Trump reported all this to the FEC, the public would not have known about it till long after the election. So how was that election interference? On to the next case. The case that Jack Smith is prosecuting in Washington, D.C., and the Supreme Court is weighing in on the issue of presidential immunity. Now, based on the opening arguments, several justices are inclined to look at the president having immunity and how much immunity that would include. At the very least, it means the trial, should it proceed, would be once again delayed and could be pushed back until after the election. But looking at the crux of the case, the prosecution will have to argue and convince the jurors, as well as an appellate court, that Trump knew what would ensue at the Capitol that fateful day. If we all remember his words to the crowd, they were to peacefully march to the Capitol. The prosecution will have to make the case that Trump was complicit in their actions. Now, how do you prove that he knew what was going to happen? All of these cases are fraught with danger for the prosecutors and appear to have galvanized support for Trump. According to a CNN poll, not of Trump fans, he now leads by 6 points nationally. And Trump's played the media card well, portraying himself as the victim of an overzealous justice system that is using the courts as a political weapon against him. Couple that with rising inflation and higher gas prices and interest rates for mortgages back over 7%, and it only makes Trump look more appealing to voters as they compare him to Biden. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.